started, so I am bound by time. Um, so just to, in case you didn't hear that, so I'm basically the founding director for the Center for South Asian Music at Habib University. And it's a very unique, one-of-a-kind center where around 150 to 200 students are learning some kind of musical instrument, sitar, tabla, violin, vocal, or they're enrolled in some courses like Music of South Asia, Music and Mathematics, Sound and Subjectivity, and so on and so forth. It's a great honor to be here, also next to such an accomplished young man. Mohammad Azaz has learnt online, purely online, from Pandit Ajoy Chakrabarti. And so if any of you were thinking that, online learning isn't possible, or, where there's a will, you can come a very long way, and hopefully we're going to demonstrate that to you. So when I say the mathematics in our music, I am talking about a focus on South Asian music. In the West, for example, there's music and then there's world music, which is also complicating and confusing the idea of music. So this is definitely not going to be from a purely Western standpoint. As I proceed through this talk, and here are some interesting quotes by mathematicians and physicists about music. In the West, prior to the Renaissance period, music was a science. It is only after and during the Renaissance that it takes on the form of an art and is started to be seen as an art. In South Asia, music has been both throughout. And mathematical ideas were taught simultaneously with musical ideas. They were not really. And if you look at the complexities of the instruments that you have in South Asia, all of those are not without their mathematical inquiry. Here's another image that it's kind of a medieval image. It's a woodcut from 1504, so around the time just before the Renaissance. You have the 7 liberal arts have music as part of it. In Pakistan, music education is something that we find is missing, is absent in most institutions. And where it can be found, it's a confused mix of various strains. So today we're going to kind of decode a few things. We're going to start from talking about what it is that is common to all musical traditions around the world, okay, when it comes to melody. Okay, so there's 2 things that we're going to explore today. One is melody and the other is rhythm. Melody refers to the tunes that we come to enjoy and hear, right? But there's something common about melody across the board, throughout the world, right? And so that's where, when we think about music as a unifying force, right? It's a universal language, yes, but there's some common elements that all human beings have likened to, okay? And in our part of the world, it is unfortunate that in Pakistan there is less music education. In our part of the world, music had such a reverence. And here is a painting that depicts the degree of that reverence. This painting is showing Mia Tansen sitting in the middle, and Akbar is standing behind him and is standing behind some trees. And this was the only way that the great Emperor Akbar could see and visit the teacher of Mia Tansen, Swami Haridas. That was the great reverence of music. Our neighboring country still holds that reverence. Here we have started to lose touch with that. If I were to ask you, what is common about tea in all parts of the world, right? What are the basic constituent elements of tea, what would you say? Chai, which every culture has some form of it, right? What are the basic elements that you need for chai? Anyone? Tea leaves and water, right? We call it the patti and the pani, right? So I'm going to ask you now, what is the patti and the pani, the tea and water, for melody around the world? So tal is part of rhythm, right? So I heard a word called sur, all right? Some of you understand that as note, tone, okay? Rhythm, again, not necessarily, it's not needed for melody, right? But what are the common strains of melody around the world? What's the patti and pani of melody? It's the tones, the 12 tones. And it's okay if a lot of you didn't know that answer, because we have all sorts of confusing phrases in our culture as well. For example, how many of you have heard the phrase "Saat suron ki dunya"? Right? You've definitely heard that. Right? And I'm saying 12 sur hai, so that can be confusing. And we'll decode this in just a second. So yes, we do understand this idea of 7 notes. We've heard it somewhere before. The 12 tones are found in practically every musical tradition in the world. Some musical traditions use more than just these 12. Okay? Definitely in Arabic music, you will find the usage of sometimes 17 tones. Okay? Yeah. Those who are taught about the maqams of Arabic music, even when they're doing tilawat, they understand the usage of these 17 tones. But 12 are definitely common for all musical traditions. So I'm going to focus on what's common and what are definitely used in South Asian music as well. So you should be seeing some letters coming across, some keys. And the keys that I've used are keys of the piano. However, there is an instrument that came in along with the British Raj, and that's called the harmonium, which some of us know as peti and baja and other ways to talk about it. So the reason I've used the image of the piano keys, which are also found on the harmonium, is because it might be possible for you to see a pattern. Do you all see a pattern in the keys? There's definitely a pattern with the black keys that you can spot more easily, right, against the white. So do you see this 2-3, 2-3 pattern with the black keys? Yeah? Okay. And so it's very important to understand that there's kind of this repeatability that we're talking about, okay, with the 12 tones. Now, you'll see over here there are some capital letters and some small letters. So I'm using the English language to our advantage. We don't have this capital small idea in Urdu. So I'm going to now start to decode what these letters mean and what they stand for. Some of you have probably already guessed what they stand for. Those of you that have guessed it, can you tell me? Absolutely, there you go, right? So thankfully our audience knows enough about music to know that these are the do, re, mi, fas, or this is the sol, fa of our South Asian music. Okay, and here are the names of these notes, and Azaz is going to tell you a little bit about how they are pronounced.
Sure. So the first one is called the kharaj. The second one is re, and it is called rikhab. Now, it might be pronounced differently, but rikhab bhi bolte hain, rishabh bhi bolte hain, depends on the region you're in. So in India, both of the terms are used. In Pakistan, normally you hear the word Rikhab. Then we have Ga. Ga is Gandhar. And Ma is Madhyam. And Pa stands for Pancham. So Panchve sur se Pancham. Panchva sur Pancham. Then Dha stands for Dhevat. It is the sixth note. Then Ni stands for Nikhad or Nishad. दोनों आपको सुनने को मिलेंगे.
So there are many languages in India, there are many pronunciations, so there are these varieties you find, right? So Sharaj, Rikhab, Gandhar, Madhyam, Pancham, Dhevat and Nikhad. But when we're singing these names, we only refer to the syllable that kind of shortens them. So Sa, Re, Ga, Ma, Pa, Dha, Ni. And how many do you count? There's 7 names. So there's definitely 7 names of the swars or the notes. But 5 of these have a sibling, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay? So wherever you see the small letters on the screen, that stands for the flattened version of Rikhab or Komal Rikhab. The capital letters stand for the sharper versions, Tivar.
Yeah.
Okay? In fact, it'll be written up for you as well. So each of these Re, Ga, Ma, Dha and Ni have a Komal and a Tivar. That makes 10 tones, right? Because there's 5 of them that have a sibling. And then 2, Sa and Pa, these are known as Qaim Sur. They are fixed, they do not have any sibling.
Yeah.
Okay, so they will not be categorized with Komal or Tivar. Okay, Sa and Pa will be fixed. You know, funny enough, even in the Western system, there are places which don't either have a flat or a sharp. And there's 2 such places that exist in that system as well. There are many legends about how musical knowledge has traveled either from Greece to India or India to Greece or whatnot. The Pythagorean scale, as many people have called it, in the evolution of the 12-tone scale. There are legends in our part of the world, which I'm not surprised, where Pythagoras was sent by his teacher to Hindustan to learn more about music. Of course, you'll hear that mostly from Hindustanis. And the legends will differ if you hear it from the Greeks. So again, but they're just that, they're legends. Anything we know about Pythagoras is written by people hundreds of years later. Now in these 12 tones, I've started the Sa from the white, this white key, which in our part of the world now we call it Pehla Safed, right? And then there's Komal Re, Tivar Re, Komal Ga, Tivar Ga, Komal Ma, Tivar Ma. This Komal Ma sometimes is also known as Shuddha Ma, and we'll get into that a little later. Pa, Komal Dha, Tivar Dha, Komal Ni, Tivar Ni. And then it's back to Sa. Do you notice that Sa has a little bit of an apostrophe on it? Now I'm going to explain to you what that means. All of these are frequencies of sound. And each frequency, if you play twice that frequency, you're going to get one of those letters with the apostrophe on it. Okay, so for example,
Yeah.
so right now you're hearing a drone. You might be hearing it on the speakers. And this drone is just Sa and Pa being played in succession on what's called a Tanpura. And Sa is our home note. It's the notes that we call home. And everything else is going to be a journey. And you're going to even feel a certain tension if we don't come back home. You'll feel that lack of resolution. Now twice this, the upper Sa. They're the same tone. One was twice the frequency of the other. That's all. So that Sa with the apostrophe that you see, that's the upper Sa. Sur wohi hai.
Sur bhaiya.
It's in the higher, what's known as an octave. we call it a saptak, based on 7, because 7 notes. So music in South Asia is about the vocal tradition first, right? There's a concept in our music called Nad Brahma, which means that the voice, the human voice, is divinity. And all our instruments are framed around this voice. So the middle octave, or what's known as the Madhya Saptak, is this. And you're going to hear all the 12 tones in succession now in the Madhya Saptak, the middle octave.
Okay, so I'm going to first identify all the even notes followed by the.
Right now, first all the 12 tones together.
Okay. Sa re ga ga ma ma pa dha dha ni ni sa.
अब ये आपको इतना म्यूजिकल नहीं लगा होगा. This must not have felt like music to you because you're not used to hearing all 12 tones in succession, right? Let's try it again. Sa re re ga ga ma ma pa
dha dha ni ni sa.
It almost sounds like a suspense scene from a Hum TV drama, you know. You're not used to hearing all the 12 tones in succession. So now what we're going to do is we're going to separate them for you a little bit, and suddenly it will feel like music to you.
Yeah.
Okay? Or at least melody. Now just the tivar surs, okay? All the sharp notes.
Sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa
Sa
ni dha pa ma ga re sa.
So here you heard the tivar notes, and these notes suddenly you recognized it
Sound more pleasant.
as musical, right? If you take any of these 7, keeping let's say one re, one ga, one ma, but either komal or tivar, you're going to find something that sounds musical. If you play all the 12 tones together, suddenly you're going to. Now there are ways to play all of them together in which you could get something interesting. However, we stick to about 7. We can go less than 7. But if we take any of these 7 at once, we get a different mood or tone. Azaz, can you do all the komal notes now?
Yeah. Sa re ga ma pa dha ni sa sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa.
And so you see that it was a very different mood altogether. Now, there has been a lot of mathematical work that has gone into music to come upon the formula by which these instruments are going to be designed, by which sitar strings are going to be subdivided, guitar strings are going to be subdivided. And the mathematics of that is what I'm going to just talk about quickly. This is more kind of analytical, where it's not that I'm going to have you do any of the math. That will come later in this talk. This next part of the slide is just going to show you that what I called sa on that previous screen can shift and change if it needs to. You can make any of these tones your home note, and you can still have the same patterns.
Yeah.
Pause karna hai? So previously we had sa, re. Now what was my re? I'm going to make it my new sa. Re, sa, sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa. sa ni da pa ma ga re sa. And suddenly the relationships were the same, but we started from a different point. What was the re of the previous iteration became the home note of this iteration, right? And just to demonstrate to you the importance of marking a home note, because you can also ask the question, why do we always have this idea of a home note? So watch. Eman ki chal, lekin sa ko nahi chuna.
Okay.
हाँ, C sharp.
Sa.
That's our home note.
Sa. Re. Ga. Ma. Pa. Dha. Ni. Sa.
Sa ni dha pa ma ga re sa. If I don't hit the sa, you feel like something was not complete. Let's try another exercise. Sa, this is my sa now. Ni re ga re. You're waiting for sa, aren't you? You don't even know it, but you're waiting for it. Ni re ga ma re ga re. Ni da ma da ni. You want sa, I know, but I'm not giving it. Ni ni re. You almost want to complete it, right? So this idea of the home note, and it's in all musical traditions, by the way, even in Western music, it's called the tonic. You know, without it, that resolution becomes very difficult. Now, all of this becomes possible because of the way we've subdivided notes. If you think about the vibration of a string, it's going to give you a particular frequency. Now, if you vibrate half the length of that string, is going to give you twice the frequency of 2t. That's the same thing as like sa, sa, re, re. So any one length of string, if you vibrate half of it, you're going to get twice the frequency. And so that's how we get a lot of these tones in the scale. Again, you can continue this exercise, and if you break it up into 3 equal parts, then you get a frequency of 3t, right? And that actually becomes what we call the pancham of the higher saptak, of the tar saptak. And as we keep this kind of subdividing exercise going, you get to a point where you discover more tones through this continuous subdivision. However, and this is what's known as the Pythagorean scale, this exercise continued for at least a good 1,000 years, maybe more. It's hard to say, but as far as we know, at least in the last 1,000 years, the Pythagorean scale or its equivalent has been used in most musical traditions. It's in the Renaissance period where Western music had priorities of harmony, of surs on top of each other, that instruments had to be refined a little bit more. And this is where mathematicians came into the picture. And of course, because of the British Raj, a lot of that mathematics of what's known as the equal temperament scale came into our music as well. Although our music didn't have harmony as part of it, so it wasn't a priority. So by ear, you could actually tune any instrument, and if it sounded good to the ear, it was fine. But then, as we became more global, we needed standard international units for these frequencies. And so, what ends up happening, and this is just probably somewhere in the beginning of the last century, that this gets established and concretized, is this idea of the frequency multiplying by an irrational number called the 12th root of 2, okay, to give you the next frequency. So from sa to komal re, sa re, to get from that frequency to the next frequency, you just have to multiply it by a number called the 12th root of 2, and you get your next frequency F1. Okay, just like that, you want to go from komal re to tivar re, sa re re. Now you have to multiply again by 12th root of 2, right? And it's so interesting that in all of these aspects of our lives, I mean, pi, e, you know, these transcendental, irrational numbers come up as solving a problem, you know, and it's an aesthetic problem in this case, right? It's about how our ears perceive consonance and dissonance. And so that's how all the 12 tones, and what is the 12th root of 2? It's approximately 1.0594631, and it goes on forever, of course. And one can wonder, you know, when we talk about, oh, this person sounds so melodious, there's so much in sur. Maybe we're really talking about the number of decimal places that they're accurately depicting that frequency for. Because most of these frequencies, they are all irrational numbers. They're being multiplied by an irrational number, so they are all irrational as well. And to standardize this system, what I think they had to do was to have one whole number. And so that was the note A, which became 220 hertz or 440 hertz if you double the frequency. That was the one whole number, and then everything gets multiplied by the 12th root of 2. And so you have this function, this formula that gives you whichever frequency you want, right? And it's an exponential function. Some of you may have studied exponential functions in mathematics in high school. Some of you might have nightmares about exponential functions, but this is where they apply in music. If you look at a graph, then if the starting point on the y-axis, that's your sa, then all of the notes go according to this exponential curve. Well, right now I've not made a curve. These are all the tones and their frequencies. So you can see that, after that, after the 12th tone, you are now in the next octave. And so, and you can almost think of it as the doubling time in exponential functions, if the bottom axis was time. But here it's not. Here it's just the next note. Note number 1, number 2, number 3. So if number 1 is sa, that's how you're going. In our music, in South Asian music, this does become a curve though. These are all points in Western music, but in our music, which is also known as microtonal music, we look at the in-between frequencies of these frequencies as well. What do I mean by in-between frequencies? Sa, re. These are the two notes separately. Now here, how you can join sa and re seamlessly.
So many methods. I'll apply one of them. So this is sa, re, sa, re, sa, re, ga, ga, ma, ma, pa, pa, dha, dha, ni, ni, sa, and then coming back, sa, ni, dha, pa, ma, ga, re, sa.
So do you see that there was a lot of sliding between the notes, and that's why I made a curve for South Asian music, because we don't only look at those 12 tones. The way we adorn those 12 tones, we dress them up, is by looking at all the frequencies, and there's infinitely many. And all those in-between frequencies that we use, they are known as shruti. What are they known as? Shruti in our music. And the degree to which we can employ shruti is what makes our melodies work. And that's what brings us to our next point, which is our ornaments. What are the ornaments in our music musical ornaments that employ these shrutis. Okay, so what you just heard right now was mostly meaned, sliding between notes. Sa, re, right? Instead of sa, re, sa, re, meaned.
Yeah.
Now, that's also a meaned, but between swars that we don't usually like. That's why it's alarming, right? So you see how music can also be used to spread disarray. Okay. Do we need to be alarmed by that, or it was a drill? Okay.
Ji.
So meaned was sliding. Next we look at murki, taking a small cluster of notes in kind of a rapid, it's almost like within a blink of an eye. Okay.
So we're going to take the same 7 notes. We're going to try and implement murki. Clear now? Okay. So we're going to take the same 7 notes and we're going to implement murki in it. So मैं मुर्की लगाता हुआ नोट्स के बीच के मैं ऊपर वाले सा तक जाऊंगा. This is सा रे ग म प ध नि सा सा नि ध प म ग रे सा.
क्या बात?
There's a small flutter between each one.
This is a cluster of notes, nearby notes. Sa re sa ni sa, you know, sa re sa ni. But jaldi se lena. So that's called murki, and you've heard it in all sorts of songs. Can you give a demonstration of where it's applied in a context of a song? Just give an example. It doesn't. रंगी सारी कोई और कर लो.
Yeah, any to Nena Mori Nena More तरस गए आजा बलम परदेस नैना मोरे तरस गए आजा बलम परदेस.
So you saw how using murki, makes for a richer experience. You could also say Naina more taras gaye. That's the breakdown of the melody if I was just talking about the tones being used. Yeah. But suddenly
आजा बलम परदेसे नैना मोरे तरस गए.
And if you have a cluster of murkis, that's known as a zamzama. Many murkis in succession. Can you show it in the same context?
नैना मोरे
क्या बात है? And so these are some of the ornaments that we use. Now there's another ornament called gamak, okay? And this is a very old ornament that was employed in our music. And gamak is almost meaned that's rapidly done between notes. So, for example, gamak.
So let's come to classical, because gamak to sing. So the same 7 notes. Now I'm going to demonstrate the gamak in simpler words. To understand this, it's just like you throw a rubber ball against a wall and it's going to rebound a certain distance. So each note is coming back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. This back and forth is gamak. So here you go. sa 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 re 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 ga 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 ma 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 ba 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 da 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 ni 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 sa 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 sa. Now normally a gala which is not trained would say sa 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 sa. It would be without that elasticity. So this elasticity that I have is allowing me to go back and forth.
And so with this we have these patterns that we can create with notes, which use this idea of permutations of notes. So for example, a pattern that's written up as well, 132, would be seen as sa ga re. If you look at the order of the notes, sa re ga, so if you make sa 1, re 2 and ga 3, then 132 would be sa ga re, re ma ga,
ga pa ma.
Now if you heard that with gamak, suddenly that takes on a new dimension.
Ah,
Ah.
ah,
And if we do it in succession, it becomes what's known as a palta. क्योंकि वो
ah,
सुर पलट जाते हैं. You can have 3 1 2, ga sa re,
ga sa re ah,
ma re ga, and pa ga ma. So if you do all of this in succession, it makes a new kind of a sound.
Yeah.
Can you do this one? 3 1 2. Okay. So we could, I mean, there are many permutations of these notes and so you could have 3-note permutations, you could have 4-note permutations, and these are what are known as paltas. And paltas are used in an idea called a taan in our music, which is stringing together many notes, right? So with this context, of course, listening to a taan becomes a different kind of experience, right? And what is a taan? A taan is basically taking many notes in rapidity using this device called gamak. Sa, ni re ga re ni re sa. That's a small taan.
Yeah. Yeah. For
A
example.
bigger taan.
Ni re ga ma da ni re sa ni da ba ma ga re sa. Ah.
And so that's how you see the ornaments help us string together the notes. And now you can have complex paltas within the context of these taans. So a complex palta that Azaz is going to demonstrate now.
Yeah. So for this you need to understand the number pattern first. So we have 1 1 2 1 and the numbers are positioned in order that, for example, for the first palta, if sa is 1, re is 2, ga is 3, ma is 4 and pa is 5, so you get the first combination of notes, which is sa sa re sa, then 1 1 3 1 is sa sa ga sa, 1 1 4 1 is sa sa ma sa, and 1 2 5 4 3 2 1 is sa re pa ma ga re sa. So the last one is going to give you a memory, a little jolt. For example, when you're jumping from 2 to 5, okay, what's the note going to be? So this is also going to remove any kind of cramming in your head. So I'm going to sing this with quick succession. Now with every succession, we are eliminating sa, the home note, like we discussed earlier. Moving on to sa will become re, then re will become ga. We get 7 paltas. So here goes. Sa sa re sa, sa sa ga sa, sa sa ma sa, sa re pa ma ga re sa, re re ga re, re re ma re, re re pa re, re ga dha pa ma ga re, ga ga ma ga 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 pa ga 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 dha ga, ga ma ni dha pa ma ga, then ma ma pa ma 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 dha ma 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 ni ma ma pa sa ni dha pa ma. And if I do it in quick succession, it becomes a taan. And in आ से करूँगा तो गमक बनेगी. अब आप दोनों चीज़ें देखें, इसमें आपको नजर आएंगी. सा सा रे सा 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 गा सा 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 ma सा सा रे pa ma ga re sa re re ga re 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 ma re 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 pa re re ga dha ma ma ga re ga ga ma ga 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 pa ga 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 dha ga ga ma ni dha pa ma ga ma 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 dha ma 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 ni ma ma pa sa ni dha pa ma. और इसी को अगर आकार से करें तो आ
these tans are utilized in conjunction with, of course, a composition and a rag or a particular set or collection of the komal and tivar sur combinations. And so what we are going to now get to is how beat cycles, now all of this melodic work gets overlaid onto beat cycles, which we call tal, right? And from which we get the word tali, which is the way we keep track of tal. So for that, I'm going to just talk about modular arithmetic quickly, okay? And this is the arithmetic that all of you are aware of. You don't need to actually learn anything new here. You see modular arithmetic in your daily lives, okay? So I'm saying this for all you math anxious people out there, right? You look at 7 days of the week, yeah, 12 months in a year. After the 12 months, you come back to month number 1. 7 days of the week, after the 7th day, you come back to day number 1. It's cyclical arithmetic, okay? So if you want to talk about, today is what, Saturday, right? And if I tell you, 10 days from now, so once you get to the next Saturday, you'll just go 3 days more, right? And you're doing that, or you're doing modular arithmetic, right, without really knowing that it's called that. So for example, you see this cycle up here. This is kind of a modular diagram that shows you how many subdivisions does this circle have, if you take a look at it closely. You might be tempted to say 8. There are 9 subdivisions, right? So this is actually calculations of mod 9, okay? 0 to 1 is one subdivision, then 1 to 2, then 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, 7 to 8, and then h to 0. That 0 can also be replaced by a 9. It's the same thing, okay? Then there are statements that you can make, and these statements make us mathematicians look so scary, because what are they writing now? This is their own language, right? So 9 mod 9, it just means that, 9, the number 9 in mod 9 would just be the equivalent of 0, because it's coming back to square 1. 10 mod 9, however, in a cycle of 9, would be the equivalent of the number 1, okay? 11 mod 9 would be the equivalent of the number 2. So that's kind of what this is talking about. And why I've underlined the one that is equivalent of number 1 is because that number 1 in modular arithmetic for rhythm in South Asia is extremely important. It is known as the sum. What is it known as? The sum. Not the math sum, not the lump sum, but sum from समय. एक साइकिल का समय पूरा हो जाता है और नया समय शुरू हो जाता है, तो वो सम. अच्छा. So, for example, if we look at a mod 16 diagram, it would look like this. Quite a scary diagram, I admit. And we have a tal called a 16-beat cycle tal called teen tal. Okay, so it goes something like this. And I've actually written the bowls out. So in tabla we have syllables for every stroke on the drum. So ta, te, ghe, na, te te ka ta. Right? So everything we say, we play. Right? We practice what we preach. Okay? So dha, dhin, dhin, dha, dha, dhin, dhin, dha, dha, tin, tin, ta, ta, dhin, dhin, dha, dha, dhin, dhin, dha, dha, dhin, dhin, dha, dha, tin, tin, ta, ta, dhin, dhin, dha. Now, how will you keep track of this? Through clapping? I'll show you. So, we're going to, this is basically 4 sets of 4. Dha, dhin, dhin, dha, dha, dhin, dhin, dha, dha, tin, tin, ta, ta, dhin, dhin, dha, dha, dhin, dhin, dha, dha. सब लोग ताली दें. Din, dha, dha, tin, tin, ta, ta, dhin, dhin, dha, dha. So look, there was one place where there was a khali, no tali. उसको कहते हैं हम khali. That was 9, at the point 9. It was right in the center. ठीक है? And I'm going to show you another diagram which is a little less scary than the diagram I showed you earlier. And the reason why it's a little less scary is because you don't have to deal with that awful 0 anymore. So what we've done in this diagram is that I have just given the numbering to each beat. or each matra, adab, to each beat. So now it's going to be a little bit less scary because I know those zeros, you know, wherever they come up, man, they really scare us, right? You add zeros, the only place you really want to see zeros is on a check that's being signed for you, right? Yeah. Okay. So there's your sum, okay? And notice I've changed the spelling a little bit to separate it from the mathematical sum, okay? And there's your khali, okay? And so I want you to keep the clap with me again. Dha, din, din, da, dha, din, din, da, dha, din, din, da, da, din, din, da, dha, din, din, da. ये बात अब देखा सम पे पहुंचाने का तरीका था ये. There was a way in which we land on the sum. Okay, so let's keep it going, and I'm going to show you a few ways in which we land on the sum, which means that there's some mathematics going on in the background where I have to make sure that I bring it to the sum, right? So keep the clap going because you're going to experience it better with the clap. 2, 3, and da, din, din, da, da, din, din, da. Keep the clap. ये बात. Now, in all of this work, there is a device we use in our music that's known as a tihai. What is it known as? Tihai. What number do you think it relates to? 3. Ye baat. See? You already know this stuff. You know it from the core. You've been listening to tihais all your life. You just didn't know you were listening to them. Let me play a tihai for you in a context that you'll understand it. So I know we're sitting in Punjab, but I'm going to take you to Sindh for a while. Are you ready? ये सुना है आपने? ये आखिरी चीज जो मैंने की, तिहाई. Takit dhan, takit dhan, takit dhag dhag, dhinakta, dhinakta. Ab now keep the count, keep that same teen tal count, it'll still work here, look. Dhag dhag, dhinakta, 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 dhag dhag, dhinakta, 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 dhag dhag, dhinakta, 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 takit dhan, takit dhan, takit dhag dhag, dhinakta, 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 dhag. And that was a tihai. It was a phrase repeated 3 times and lands on the sum. Now I'm going to do an exercise with you. We're going to cut the questions, okay? So because this timer is this, okay? So I'm going to do an exercise with you where you're going to keep teen tal and you're going to actually do a tihai on top of it, and you're going to feel really special about yourselves, which is what we all should feel, especially in the math classroom, right? So here's a tihai for you. Are you ready? Okay. So we're going to come back to teen tal, all right? And I'm going to just write some stuff up here. That's all the jargon that it's unreadable. I don't think you're going to like it, but I'm going to write it anyway. But I'm going to make you do something that's going to help you understand what's written up here, okay? So mathematicians pride themselves on these symbolic summaries that they write, right? And we write it to feel really, really special. But if we just use plain English or Urdu or whatever language you want to, it would be much better. So as this is continuing to type itself, I'm going to make you practice a little bit of teen tal. Are you ready? So, dha din din da dha din din da dha din din ta ta din din da dha din din da dha din din da dha din din ta ta din din da dha din din da din din ta ta. Keep it going. Din din ta tihai, I'm only going to ask you to count till 5, but it's going to be over this, so you got to keep the clap going while you're doing this. Din da da din da da din da tik din. 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 din da na din na. मेरे साथ 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5. कोई नहीं बोल रहा, सब डर के मारे. चलें फिर से. Okay, this time I tell you what, you're going to just say the 5 stuff, I'm going to keep the clap. Are you ready? Da din da din da na tin ta tik din. 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 din na din. Very good. 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5. अब देखो इस 1 2 3 4 5 को हम तबले की ज़बान में क्या करेंगे? ना दिन da na tin ta. दादी दागे तीना गिना धा, दादी दागे तीना गिना धा, दादी दागे तीना गिना धा. अब keep the count. Tin na tin na. And if you really want to enjoy our music, add the sum. And this is what Kanrasya, connoisseur क्या होता है? सम पे गर्दन हिलाता है. ठीक है, सम पे आपने गर्दन हिलानी है और कहना है वाह वाह वाह, हा हा सुभान अल्लाह,
वाह आहा कहना है.
देखिए फिर से, अब देखिए कितना मजा आएगा इसमें. धा दिन दा दिन दा दिन ता. 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3. हाँ ना दिन ये बात. So we have all sorts of calculations. अब आप देखेंगे कि आप गिनती रखेंगे और बहुत सारी तिहाइयाँ आएंगी. There are tihais that go over one cycle as well. अभी तो ये sum to sum tihai थी. What was it? A sum to sum tihai, where we did it within one cycle. But suppose I went over a cycle. Okay? So now he's going to keep a tune with us in this, and that's going to be the tal. Melody is going to become rhythm, and we're going to work over the melody.
Sa na pa ma ga ma re ga ma pa ga ma re sa. Sa na pa ma ga ma re ga ma pa ga ma re sa. जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, 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 जाग उठे सब.
अब जाग पे सम है तो जाग पे आपने गर्दन हिलानी और वावा कहना है. चाहे आपको समझ में आया ना आए, आपने वावा कर देनी है. ठीक है, आप सबको इतना मजा आएगा. देखें,
जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, 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 जाग उठे सब जन.
अब इसमें कैलकुलेशंस देखें. गुफ्तगू तबले की तिहाई भी है, गुफ्तगू भी है. तिन तिन ता टिक दिन दिन दा दिन दा दिन ना तिन तिन ना टिक दिन ना.
उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, गौवन के चरवाल चरैया, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब.
अब देखें, दा दिन ना दिन ना दिन ना दा क्रांता गदीन दा दादी के दिख टिका ता गदीन दा दादी के दिख टिका ता गदीन ना ना दादी के दिख टिका ता गदीन धा कता गदीन धा कता गदीन धा दा क्रांता गदीन धा दादी के दिख टिका ता गदीन धा कैसे? Now, in the backdrop of this bandish, you'll see जाग पे सम था और जाग पे ही ये इसकी आखिरी चीज़, ये 3 बार repeat हो गई, repeated 3 times, and this is a complex तिहाई which exceeds one beat cycle, and the modular arithmetic is in making a composition that still lands squarely on the one. तो हिसाब किताब भी है, नज़ाकत भी है, गुफ्तगू भी है, वक्त की पाबंदी भी है. यहाँ पे 1 minute 27 seconds मुझे यहाँ पे टाइमर दिख रहा है, उसकी भी पाबंदी है. अब देखें, जाग उठे
सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे.
अब इसमें गुफ्तगू देखें, ताज दिन दिन ना जाग उठे
सब जन तुम जागो,
जाग
उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, गौवन के चरवाल चरैया, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, 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 जाग उठे.
अब देखिए, तकड़ा इसके 2 2 2 की शक्ल दिखाएंगे, फिर इसकी 1 2 3 की शक्ल दिखाएंगे. 6 की बाँट है और वो सम पे आएगी. जाग
उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे. क्या बात है? जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, गौवन के चरवाल चरैया, 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 जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे, जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, गौवन के चरवाल जाग जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे, जाग उठे सब, जाग सब उठे सब, जाग उठे, उठे सब जन तुम जागो, जाग उठे सब, सब जाग उठे सब जन तुम जागो, 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 जाग